Hey everybody, let's keep this momentum going on YouTube. Really quick, I want to say thank you to everyone who's been watching these long form videos, trying to give some interesting, insightful, valuable discussions about things related to shipping and my business specifically. And I'm just seeing a lot of views on those, and my view count is jumping up, heading rapidly towards monetization, although it's still a ways off. Just want to take a minute to say thank you. Beyond that, topic for today is, why did I charge $100 for a shipment that fit inside my car and only required an additional less than 2 miles of driving off of routes that I committed to outside of that item? First thing I want to say right off the bat, because if you leave the video now, I want you to hear this. It is really important to me to work directly with my customers to provide a good value to them. I am never looking at it like I want to get as much money as I can out of a customer in order to complete a shipment. I try to choose fair pricing that's fair to me, fair to my customer. That's super important. Let me take my sunglasses off and say it directly. Eye contact from me to you through the screen, through my phone, through YouTube. That's super important to me. And so in no way, I kind of wanted this to be a clickbait title. I want people to click on my videos. I want you to watch my videos, but I don't want to give the impression for more than a split second that I'm ever looking at pricing or any other part of the shipping process as an opportunity to overcharge for any reason in any way. So let's talk through why I feel that $100 was the right price for that shipment. And I have 4 categories. That's dangerous. That cracking sound is that tree. So past the threat. 4 things I'm going to talk about. 1 is opportunity cost. You've maybe heard of that before. 2, law of averages. You've probably heard that term before. 3, value to the customer. And 4, costs not related to mileage. So let's run through those. Opportunity cost. Here's what it means. It means that if I commit to one shipment, I cannot do any shipment that is incompatible with it. It cost me the opportunity to do anything else. So the opportunity cost on this particular shipment was admittedly fairly low. And I didn't necessarily know how low it was when I accepted the shipment and when I priced the shipment. I didn't realize that this was going to fit in the car. It barely fit in the car. That was nice. I took the opportunity to put it in the car because it was easier for me and it was safer for the item. But I didn't know that it would fit in the car. I thought it might have to go on the trailer. That's an opportunity cost against the use of the trailer. If something's on the trailer, that's space that's used up in which I can't put anything else. Now I might not find anything else, so maybe I would have given up the opportunity to make $100 and instead made nothing. Or let's say the customer didn't want to go for $100, he wanted $50. Well, now I can give up the chance to make $50 in hopes that somebody who is willing to pay $100 or maybe more than $100 will book my services instead, and I will be free. I will have the trailer space available to do their shipment because I don't have it taken up with this customer's shipment. If he had said he wanted to do it for $50, I probably might have said yes, only because he's a really loyal customer and I try really hard to meet his needs and to say yes to every possible shipment. So maybe on the like, hey, let me just do you a favor this time basis, I would have said yes. But he's also a customer who cares about being fair to me and paying me a fair rate for the services that I provide. So didn't really expect him to come back with $50, a $50 counter offer, because that just feels pretty low for the service that I provided. And I'll talk a little more about that as I get into the other three categories. It's not just opportunity cost against the space on the trailer. It's also the opportunity to do anything maybe that's requires a different time frame or a different route. At the time when I accepted the shipment or the offer to do the shipment, all I knew was that I was going to be in St. Louis, Missouri, and I needed to get back to Michigan. And this item was in South Bend. So based on what I knew, it was probably most likely going to be along my route. But I didn't know what other shipments might be available, what shipments I might find on UShip, maybe through another cold call, who knows. I didn't know what other opportunities might present themselves. And let's say I had an opportunity to pick something up in St. Louis, Missouri, but it needed to go to Toledo, Ohio, and it was going to pay $500, hypothetically. Well, now stopping in South Bend doesn't make a whole lot of sense, even if I had the trailer space available. So you kind of get the idea. That's all opportunity cost. Once you commit to one job, you can no longer do any jobs that are incompatible with that job. So kind of the biggest fallacy that is promoted, that's fallacy means something that is fake, something that's not really true, that's promoted by UShip specifically, is that you should be able to get a really good price from somebody who's already going that way anyways. It's like, well, I have extra space in my truck or on my trailer, I'm already going that way anyways, so I'll give you a super deal. And that's not necessarily a very smart move on the part of the transporter, because let's say I have half of my trailer open and an item that can be moved on half of a trailer from here to wherever is worth $500. I'm gonna wait for a customer who doesn't care that I am going that way already and who's willing to pay what that transport's worth. Why would I give away my services just because I'm going that way already? Now I'm giving up all of the many jobs for the many people who are willing to pay what transport is worth in order to accommodate the one person who wants to get a super deal because I'm already going that way. Your deal just caused me to use up my trailer space. Now I can't accept any of the $500 jobs that people are willing to pay for that amount of space along that route, because I just told you, hey, I'll give you your job for $75, because what the heck, it's an extra $75, and I was already going there anyway. That's a huge cost to me. So that, I think, covers opportunity cost well enough. You can extrapolate from there, but it's really easy to understand. But in practice, it's a little bit harder because you have the fear that you might not find anything at all. So maybe I should just go for that $75. And it does take some time to kind of understand the business well enough and understand the likelihoods of different things happening or not happening to know whether you should hold off, because there's a really good chance you're going to be able to fill that space or fill that time, fill that distance with something that will pay significantly more, or whether it's extremely unlikely and you might as well take that opportunity to make the extra $75 if it's worth it when you factor in the other things, which I'm about to get into. Law of averages. Let's move on to that. The law of averages, I don't know if I'm using this term correctly or according to any sort of definition, but the way I look at it, it means you win some, you lose some, right? Sometimes things will go better than you expected. You'll get 3 additional shipments you didn't know you were going to get along a route that you're already happy with what you're being paid on. And you're like, sweet, I'm getting paid quadruple what I was willing to go this distance for. But other times you'll run into every problem under the book and a shipment will get canceled that you were counting on to make it worth it, but you still have to do the other one because you're a person of your word. And so you had kind of counted on these two shipments going together. Maybe let's say the big one, the one that paid well, got canceled. You can't find a replacement for it. Now you're driving this distance that you don't want to drive for a payout that doesn't make it worth it, but you're going to get it done because you have a small business, you have a reputation that you care about, and you want to meet your customers' needs and you want to keep your commitments. Both of those things will happen. And what you should not do, in my opinion, is charge more, to the customer whose shipment didn't work out as well as you'd hoped. Be like, oh, actually, I was going to do it for you for $200, but actually, that's not worth it to me anymore. Could you do $450? So-and-so canceled, and it's really not worth it for the price that we agreed on. Can you increase that price? I don't do that to people. If I told you I can transport your item from here to there for $200 and then some other plans fell through and it's no longer worth it to me, I'm still going to transport your item from here to there for $200. I'm not going to increase my price because things didn't go well. And on the flip side of that, I'm not going to decrease my price because things did go well. And that played into this particular shipment a little bit. I didn't really describe the shipment at the beginning of the video. It was a table. It fit in the car. In the pictures, it looked pretty big. It looked like it wouldn't fit in a station wagon, but it did, barely. And I had to duck a little bit because it was sticking up over the seat just a little bit. But it did fit. I didn't know that. That was just one of those things where it worked out better than I expected. I also didn't know it was only going to be 2 miles off my route. I knew it was going to be close to a route that I would probably most likely end up taking. And my route actually changed slightly when I picked up another different shipment. And the new route made it incredibly close. It was just off an exit, off of the road that I was already taking for the other item. And from the exit, I turned right, went down a quarter mile, turned right again on a residential street, and it was like a quarter to half mile down the residential street. It could not have been closer to the expressway. It was 3 minutes off the expressway that I was already going to be on, which was not the expressway I would have originally been on if I'd just been driving straight from St. Louis to Michigan. So anyways, a lot of things just happened to work out just right to make a decent deal even better. And I don't reduce the price for the same reason that I don't increase the price. I don't reduce prices because I don't increase prices. And the fact is that sometimes I'm going to make more than what I was willing to do the route for. And sometimes I'm going to make less than I wanted to do the route for. Those have to average each other out. If I'm decreasing the prices when things go well, then I'm going to end up having to increase the prices when things go poorly, because I won't have anything set aside from the ones that went well. It's like the 7 years of plenty followed by the 7 years of famine. You gotta take those chances to make a little bit more to offset the times that you make a little bit less. And I think that would be true with pretty much any self-employed work, but it's especially true with shipping when everything is variable all the time. You're not gonna be able to combine if you're a painter, you're not gonna be able to combine two different painting jobs and be like, oh, well, I was already painting the house next to yours anyways, now it costs less to paint yours. But when you're doing shipping specifically, it is tempting to have that attitude. The law of average, because of averaging things out, you shouldn't do that. In my opinion, you should not do that. You got to take the opportunities to make more money when you can, so that you can weather it when you end up making less than you expected to or wanted to. And the customer deserves to know upfront what it's going to cost and not have that change. Upfront pricing, that is important to me. That's 100% the way I do business. Upfront pricing, it doesn't change if I run into problems along the road. And I think a customer would rather just know this is what I'm paying than be like, hey, I might get it cheaper if things work out great, but also have to worry about the price increasing if things don't go great. So straightforward pricing, price it based on an average, not based on how well this particular shipment is lining up. That's that. Value to customer. This is where I think, how much is this job worth to my customer? Now let's say it only costs me $5 to do the job because it worked out so great. But if the job is worth $500 to the customer, why would I charge them $5? It doesn't feel right. Because even if I'm saying, well, I was already going that way anyways, and your item's like not even taking up any extra room, and why not? That doesn't feel right. It will actually feel weird to the customer to be like, well, why are you basically doing my job for free? And you're like, well, I was already going that way. This is a business. That's something your buddy would do. If my buddy asks me, especially if I don't operate a transport business, and he's just like, hey, I heard you're going to California. I have this little desk I wanted to bring, get sent out there to my sister who, lives out there. Would you mind throwing it in your truck on the way out? And I'd be like, well, yeah, could you throw me like $20? Or I might be like, yeah, I'll do it for free. Either one would be reasonable if it's my buddy asking. And I don't have a shipping business. But, I've worked with a couple of my friends who have other types of businesses. I have a couple of friends who have an antique booth or an antique mall. And for a while I rented a booth in that mall. I didn't ask for a discount. I might ask either one of those buddies to, do a personal favor for me and not expect them to charge me for it. But when it comes to their business, that's their business. So I'm going to pay what the service or the product costs anybody else, because if I'm their friend, I want them to do well in their business. And customers, for the most part, feel that way. They want to pay what the job is worth to them. They don't necessarily want, I'm sure most people will take the opportunity to get a discount if they can, but most people aren't looking for you to give away your services. And it took me a while to understand this. It took me a while to internalize this. I always felt like I was getting away with something. When I first started shipping under a different company name, at a different company, I felt like I was getting away with something if I found an additional item to go along a route that I was already moving along. And if I charged them what I thought it was worth, as if it was a single item, I felt like I was getting away with something. And I felt like the customer might be mad at me if they knew that I was actually moving 2 or 3 items along that route. And the fact is, when I first started, I had no idea how to price things at all. I had no idea about the real cost of shipping. So I was giving all my customers a great deal all the time, and yet still feeling guilty about it. So the fact is, I need to think about what that service is worth to my customer and charge them at or close to that, regardless of how it lines up for me. In this particular case, I considered asking $150 for that transport. I thought that it was probably worth $150 to my customer, or that it might be. And sometimes it's tempting to bluff a little bit and be like, yeah, $150. See if he comes back with yes or no. But then I realized I don't really want to treat people that way. I don't want people to treat me that way. I want them to name what they believe is a fair price for them. And given what I knew, and what, given all of the known factors and variables, I felt that $100 was a reasonable price for that job. So I resisted the temptation to ask $150 and just see if I could get it. And I also resisted the temptation to offer $75 because I thought, maybe he really wants a lower price. Well, he can always tell me if it's not worth it. Any of my customers can just tell me if it's not worth it to them. And then I have the option to offer a lower price or say, sorry, that's really the price I want to do that job. In most cases, I'll probably come down, but not a lot, because I am trying to price it correctly the first time. I am trying to offer a price that is reasonable for the job, for what it is, for the amount of work it takes, and for the service that I'm providing. So I think that's important. It's not necessarily all about figuring out what it costs me and charging something directly proportionate to that. And that's a tempting way to look at it. Like, I'm always going to base the charge to the customer on the cost to me. And that needs to be a factor because I need to charge them at least what it costs me to do the job and make some profit. I shouldn't be charging less than that. That's a failing business model. But I should at times be charging more than that, because maybe what it costs me plus a little bit of profit is way less than what it's worth to my customer. And maybe that number might actually sound kind of weird to them. I've had some people who seem to be off-put by a low number. They maybe are worried that they won't get good service, and there's some legitimacy to that concern, because if you are consistently pricing things too low, you will ultimately end up providing poor service at some point, because you're under financial pressure, you don't have good equipment, any number of those things. If you're not charging enough, then maybe you're not making enough to enable yourself to do a good job. So that's important too. And then the last thing was the cost other than mileage. Obviously, it's pretty standard in transportation to charge per mile, but when it really comes right down to it, I need to think, especially on a shorter distance delivery, there's other costs besides the miles, and besides the opportunity cost. There's going to be 2 stops at least. I'm stopping to pick it up, I'm stopping to drop it off. There's going to be some labor at both of those points. I need to charge for the labor, even though I don't mind that type of work. I actually really like that type of work. It's my favorite part. Unloading, loading, chatting with the people on both ends, that's typically my favorite part of every job. Driving is not. So it's tempting for me to not charge or really think about that aspect of it. I still need to charge for it because it's still a service that I'm providing. And it's still a cost. It still takes time. That time that I spend loading and unloading is time that I'm not putting in miles. And if I'm only charging by the mile, then it's time that I'm not able to do the one thing that makes me money, which is charging by the mile. So I need to consider that. And here we get to one little technicality on this specific job. Although it only required me to go 2 miles out of my way, I made the decision to complete the job early, by which I mean this was a customer I knew for a fact I would be seeing again within a semi-reasonable time frame. Within the next couple weeks, I would be driving directly to his business to pick up another item. So it really only required me to go 2 miles out of my way to do the job. But I added probably about 60 miles to my drive last night. I added over an hour of time, probably about 2 hours of time to my day. I unloaded it by myself rather than going the easier route of waiting till he was available to meet up. And I did all of that for a couple of reasons. One, now it's out of my car. That allows me to use a space in my car. If I'd let it sit in my car for 2 weeks, I don't have that space available. Pretty unlikely that I was going to use that space for a delivery job, but still, it's space that I might use for me personally, for whatever reason, to move my own stuff for whatever reason. And that's a cost. And I decided I'd rather just have it out of my car. Also, what if the wooden table is sitting in my car for 2 weeks and the car ends up sitting in the sunlight on a 90-degree day and it's 130 degrees inside the car, and that table warps and breaks or gets damaged? That's a risk that I didn't need to take. I could just deliver it and I don't have that risk. So because I charged him what was a fair price to me, I was able to feel good about, I would have felt good about dropping it off for those reasons. I'd feel good about the fact it wouldn't get damaged. I'd feel good about the fact that it's not taking up space in my car. But I might not have felt good about those extra miles if I hadn't charged him what is a fair and reasonable price for the transport. I might have been like, oh man, I didn't really make enough to justify all this extra mileage and time. And I don't feel that way. I feel happy with what I made. Even after I added those 60 miles in, I feel like I did well and I'm happy with it. It was a fair price to both of us. And that's kind of what I mean when I say, if you don't charge enough, you end up providing poor service in one way or another, or you end up feeling resentful in the process of providing good service because you're not paying yourself enough for that good service, and that's nobody else's fault. So it is really a matter of learning how to price things right so that you're covering all your bases, you're not unreasonably losing out on opportunities to do work for a better price. You're accounting for the averages, you're accounting for the times that things will go better or worse. You're providing a good value to the customer, and you are paying yourself enough that you can afford to provide the good service that you want to provide to your customers. So, thanks for watching. If you made it to the end, 28 minutes in right now, I appreciate you again watching the videos, giving me view time. I hope that this was helpful and informative. I really do want to provide valuable video content on YouTube and get those view hours. I want to do both. So if there's any specific type of content or discussion topic or information that you'd like to see or hear, please let me know. Catch you next time.